everybody. Welcome to this edition of the Leadership Roundtable. For those of you who are new, or this is your first time seeing myself or Gaurav, I'm a coach at Career Sprout, and this is our founder, Gaurav Villani, where we help people land high-paying jobs at companies that they really admire, doing work that they really enjoy. And one of the things about successful people that we've noticed is they all had a lucky break of some sort. They all had a mentor. They all had somebody who stepped in and, gave them just a gold nug, or they gave them like some opportunity that allowed them to completely change the trajectory, not only of their career, but of their entire life, quite frankly. And so the goal of this podcast is to introduce you to some really impressive folks who have incredible backgrounds, and with the hope that, one, they share a gold nug that can change the trajectory of your career or of your life, and two, so that you can ask questions. It's not very often that you get to be in the same room with extremely talented folks. And so this is your opportunity to be in a virtual room with these folks. And Gaurav, I'll let you take it away and share who we will be speaking with today.
Yeah. So today's episode, I think, is a very, very needed one because it is a topic that it's a question that gets asked to us at least 50 times a week, which is, how do I find a mentor? How do I find a mentor? And I get it, because it's something that we know. I think we all intuitively know it's such a shortcut, such a hack to help you achieve massive amounts of success if you have the right mentors. But most people don't know who to find, how to find them. And so today's guest, Elisa Garn, is someone who has absolutely perfected this method, and she has built a massive network of mentors for herself, but she's also organically taught this method to so many of her friends and family and peers and colleagues. And I know many of them. And as a result of the things she's taught around this topic, so many of them have also found levels of success that they either didn't think they could achieve or didn't think they could achieve as soon as they did. So just a little bit about Elisa. Elisa she's been in the, you could call it, human resource, people development, talent acquisition space for the last 15 years or more. She's currently a member of the Forbes Human Resource Council. She's also, or she was the president of the Salt Lake SHRM chapter. And if you don't know what SHRM is, it's the Society of Human Resource Management, and it is a massive organization. I think hundreds of thousands of people are in it, and she was a president of a chapter, and that is big. And she's been very involved with that community, and she still is. She's also the founder of Disrupt HR, and she currently serves as the immediate past director for the Utah SHRM, and also just advises several different organizations on the topics we discuss, which is people development, retention, etc. So she is just a big believer of the global impact you can have with the right strategies of finding mentors and building your career the right way. And a funny story before I bring Elisa on, the way we know each other, and this embodies everything we're going to talk about today. The way Elisa and I know each other was because when I was serving as a VP of talent at Overstock back in the day, one day she messaged me out of the blue on LinkedIn, and I was trying to find the message, but I couldn't find it. And she just said, "Hey, I saw that you're currently heading up talent at Overstock. Seems like an exciting role. What are you focused on? What are you working on? Is there any way I could help you?" And she's like, "I'd also just love to grab a coffee with you and see, how I could help you." And there was no like, "I want this, I want a job, I need this, I need that." It seemed like there was no agenda other than her wanting to learn what I do and seeing if she could find a way to help me. And so we did. She actually came to the Overstock campus. We had coffee for 2 hours. And I remember we laughed more than anything. It did not feel like quote unquote networking. And she was just taking a genuine interest in like who I am, what I do, what I need, what am I challenged with. And I remember after the fact, she followed up with me multiple times. And each time she followed up, it was her adding value to me. She would be like, "Hey, you should connect with this guy," or, "Hey, I noticed you're hiring for, a senior product manager. I know this person," or, "You should talk to my friend so and so." And it was always just, "Here, do this," or not do this, but here's how I can help. Here's how I can help. Here's how I can help. And never once did she ever ask for anything in return. And this is like an organic way, not to say I was a mentor to Elisa, but these are the strategies she would use, one of many, to secure mentors in her career. And I just thought it was really cool, very organic, very sincere. And again, it embodies who Elisa is. So with that, I'm going to bring her on and we can kick it off. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome to the podcast.
The cake.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I was telling you in our backstage before we got started here that I loved that you were going to share that story, because the reason I did is because I put you on this pedestal and I just wanted more than anything to be your friend. So I'm glad that my efforts paid off.
Man, they did. And I'm very glad that you did too. It's been fun. Feels like we've known each other for 100 years.
I know. Well,
right?
I feel like, we talk about dog years and it's that 7-year thing. I think we now have to incorporate some sort of pandemic years where that has added about 20 years to anything that you talk about in a pre and post world.
I agree.
I think 100 is close.
I agree.
Fair enough. Well, thank you so much for being here. Normally on these, we dive right into some professional question or some professional expertise. But there are very few people that when we read their bio, they have a line that says, when I'm not working, I'm organizing flash mobs on the regular. What can we just start there? And what does that even mean?
I am one of those people that when I first started seeing those going around on YouTube of, sometimes they were singing and I don't know, Times Square, whatever they were doing. I loved the idea of beautifully organized, almost artistic chaos in that way, of just these like pop-up little moments that for the most part were intended to add some levity or just, like a lovely part of the mundane. But I don't really know people that do stuff like that. And living in Salt Lake City, we don't really have a lot of those spaces either where there's enough public activity to where you could just do something like that. So I would say probably the first third of my adult life, the way that I approached life was very much like waiting to be invited. I consider myself very subservient. I was very, how can I solve your problems? What can I do for you? And mousy maybe is a good word of like, I just don't want to disrupt anything. And then kind of like the next phase of my career in my personal life was, what am I waiting for? Like, why am I waiting for other people to invite me into the parties? I'll just start throwing my own parties. So I did. I organized a couple of flash mobs and I sent out invitations of, I don't even know what we're going to do, but if you're interested in participating, let's get something together. So the one that we did most recently was on Star Wars Day at a downtown venue. And we created a little dance for the song that you hear on Austin Powers. One that's a little bit hippie-ish. It was amazing. We got the DJ to play it over the loudspeakers at the last minute, and we just went out. There's probably 15 of us. We just did our little thing and then scooted around, and it was great. It was lovely.
I feel like organizing chaos is the exact same process to getting mentors, quite frankly, especially when you are dealing with like C-suite executives. I feel like it's like herding cat brains all together somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I am very excited to hopefully see a video of that.
You're on my list for the next one. Don't worry. We'll get you involved.
That would be awesome.
So one of the things that Gaurav already mentioned in your intro is you are just like a master at growing, nurturing, learning how to leverage a network in a way where it's like you are giving before you're asking, before you're taking from anybody. Once you got out of your little mousy season or whatever you called it, like what has worked for you and what hasn't in terms of convincing somebody to be your mentor?
This maybe seems a little trite, but I feel like likability is kind of important. I do think that the quality and also capacity of the mentor kind of matters in terms of answering that question. Because, for example, if I was seeking a mentor in higher education where, there might be more of a tenure-based expectation or even a hierarchy or chain of command that maybe it's not quite as kosher to just approach anyone. I would advise very differently in circumstances like that versus more of an open network of, hey, this is something I'm interested in, or I just see you as a person. Sometimes people ask me for advice on public speaking as well. And I know this is going to sound a little crass. I apologize ahead of time. But my first piece of advice is read the book, Everybody Poops. It's actually for kids, I think. But the point of it is, everyone at our core, we're all just human beings that want to be valued, that want to be seen, that want to be respected. And I feel like sometimes we put people who have met a certain level of achievement or success on a pedestal and see them as untouchable, or we don't want to bother them, or potentially risk being rejected if we ask a question or introduce ourselves. And that, to me, is more reflective of how we feel about ourselves. Do we see ourselves as comparable value to the individuals that we want to learn from, that we do hold in high regard, or anticipate some sort of connection of success? So I think that's a big part of it, is recognizing that we're all peers as humankind. There's other people that have experienced different things in other ways, but ultimately, the human race is just a collection of, I don't know, energy and DNA at the end of it. So trying to put yourself on that level playing field and knowing your own value prior to approaching others, I think is definitely relevant there. Not sure if that completely answers the question, but I know we're going to be talking about this holistically. And I really think that's point one to approaching any type of mentor relationship, is you've got to know your own worth before you expect to learn from the value of others.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. I think a lot of people earlier in their careers will think, I have nothing to offer somebody. And so if I reach out to somebody, I don't even know the first thing I should ask them, if the goal in mind is hopefully one day this person becomes like a mentor to me. And I'd love for you to kind of weigh in on this, because I think, intuitively, one, it's not so much about figuring out what you have to offer someone versus figuring out what someone needs and then figuring out a way to help them find that. And I think you've done that really well. And so how do you start that conversation? How do you find who you want to reach out to? And then how do you actually start the conversation? And I know it's not as basic as like, hey, can you be my mentor? Because I think people just trip up on the actual like tactical steps to finding a mentor.
Sure. I think sometimes, depending upon the existing relationship, or also the availability and accessibility of who you're trying to ask, generally, I tend to start just with recognition of the other person. I often reference this book, and I get that it kind of bastardized extroverts a little bit, but How to Win Friends and Influence People was a milestone in my professional career. Reading that book opened my eyes a lot to the psychology of humanity and how at our core, we just want to be seen. We want to feel important. And I think that I've taken a lot of the context of that book in my approach to various people, whether it's as approach of mentors or in other times of my career, I've been in sales, regardless of whatever the intent is. One of the chapters talks about the importance of authenticity. So there's a big difference between flattery and like genuine compliments and really like recognizing somebody. So taking that into consideration in small micro moments, whether I'm at a networking event and just, having quick interactions with people, or whether I'm intentionally reaching out to somebody to try to develop a relationship, sometimes have an ask to follow, I am constantly looking for what is something that I truly and authentically appreciate about this person. It could be where they went to school. It could be a success that they've celebrated recently. It could be an obstacle that they've overcome, or maybe something that somebody said about them recently that was shared with me. I really like finding something that is positive about the individual that I'm speaking with, because I think that sets a tone. For one, it's very disarming. People do like to feel seen. And I think that it also is a way to create a connection that doesn't immediately put up a wall of defensiveness of, Why are you asking me for something? I don't even know who you are. I'm not willing to invest my time, a valuable resource in something when I don't even know your objective. I don't know why you're reaching out to me. So I think you need to approach those, especially strangers, with some sort of a connection that is disarming, that is about them. Sometimes a little bit of a drip campaign, if you will, of staying in touch and just, starting the conversation, getting to know someone. If I were to enter the dating pool and immediately start asking people for, do you want to move into my apartment because you happen to live down the road? I mean, I might get somebody to say yes, but they're probably going to be freaky deaky Dutch people that I actually don't want living with me. So I think that's a consideration, is like, you're getting to know each other, and you might find in that courtship of understanding this person you're looking at as a mentor, that it might not be a match for you. And that's an important aspect as well, to recognize not just who has skills or knowledge or access that you're interested in, but who is going to be a good fit to help you grow and develop and nurture your progression the way that makes sense for you, that keeps you whole.
Yeah, that's really good. There's something you said in there that I want to highlight, which is accessibility. There was a post, God, I can't remember. You shared this so long ago, but it stuck with me ever since, which was, you said something around like, your mentors do not need to be billionaires or millionaires, because they're so far out of reach, right? And they're so far ahead of you that it would be probably very hard for them to empathize or sympathize with, what you're going through. And rather, the best mentors are the ones that are so much closer than you think, like 1, 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of you, right? Because they were just where you are. They know the tactical things you literally need to do next. And like, these are people that could just be your boss or a leader at one of your past companies, current companies. This could be, heck, Elisa's just really good at Excel and I'm so horrible at Excel. That's a mentor, right? And then you start kind of like, so talk about the ways in which like you identify that person, I guess. So like, let's give a real life example. Let's say I'm a customer success manager and I'm having a hard time growing my career. How would I identify somebody who is, let's say, a VP of customer success, and find a way for them to share their knowledge with me, knowing I don't know them and anything like that?
I'm going to give a tiny caveat before I answer that. There is a difference between hiring a coach and pursuing a mentor. Coaches tend to be much more, well, the way that I would talk about this in my previous company at Level Next, we would kind of look at coaches as what we typically assign that role to be, for example, in athletics. So this is an individual that is looking at the whole, that sees you and your capabilities, where you are today, understands some of your benchmark because you've invested enough time, you see them on a regular basis, and it's typically a more rigid schedule as far as, here's where I am today, this is something I am attempting to achieve, and there's more than likely a defined goal. So now it's going to be more metric based. There's a higher amount of accountability. A coach is really intended to help you achieve that goal. A mentor, on the other hand, we would talk about as like the aunt that you go visit on the weekend that has the convertible, and like, you're there to have a good time, but you also know that she's your aunt. There's a level of security and trust that you have there, where you know that there is going to be a support system and that she's not going to put you in a compromising position. So a mentor is more of somebody that is along the journey with you, that is providing a little bit of guidance and nudging and questioning to help you along your path, but not necessarily in most cases where you have that defined goal. A lot of times, the biggest benefit of a mentor is somebody that can help you figure out what the goal is. It's like, I'm stuck, I'm feeling frustrated, I don't know why I'm not getting ahead, why am I not getting promoted? And so a mentor can a lot of times help you work through that and then set you on pathways and give you the guidance that you need in order to create that clarity. So that said, going back to your example, I will say some of the most interesting places that I personally have found mentors is through job interviews. So I will go and interview with a company, no matter how happy I am at any job I've ever had, even when I've owned my own company. I take interviews all the time. I think it provides a lot of insight into my profession. It helps keep me sharp on what's happening in the industry. I also better recognize my compensatory value to know, like,
Mhm.
when I am looking, in fact, for a job, how to approach those. I never want to find myself outdated or irrelevant when it comes to work or my career. So there have been times where I've gone on interviewed for jobs I had no business interviewing for, but in doing so, created a relationship with the person who was conducting the interview. Those have turned into, like, we know each other now. Great, let's stay in touch. This is not the right fit. But sometimes I've pulled on them in future cases where it's like, I was really impressed with you in our interview. And I know I'm not looking for a job. That's not why I'm reaching out. But I really liked what you talked about with this piece. You have management experience here. I can tell that you're a tried and true professional. Do you mind if I ask you some questions? And more often than not, they're excited to share what they know. Other places that I found them are through just understanding, like, okay, if I am stuck in this customer success role and maybe I just got a performance review that says I'm not meeting a KPI or a metric or something, those situations take a lot of vulnerability and self-awareness to be able to reflect and say, how much of this do I own? Where do I actually need to improve? And coming into an ask of another professional or somebody that has perceived success with that lace of vulnerability can be very overwhelming. And again, we fear that rejection. And so trying to approach a person through the lens of just very open, authentic dialogue. I'll give you an example of another person that I worked with a few years ago. I had parted ways with a company, one of those bad fits. I hated the role. They didn't like me either. So we parted ways, and I was really struggling with my confidence and where do I go from here? I know I don't want to do this, but where can I apply these skills? And so I reached out to somebody that had, to your point, just one step above me. So I was in a director role. They were VP. I didn't go after a chief. I didn't go after a, huge mega Fortune 50 company executive. I just reached out to somebody that I could tell had it figured out. The confidence that they had in a networking event that I had gone to, I was really impressed with. I liked the way they carried themselves. And my biggest problem at the time was confidence in where I went. So when I reached out to her, my message was that it was, we didn't even meet, but you were at this event and I saw you in the room and you just had this confidence about you. And that's something I'm working on right now. I was just, if you have the time, I would love to buy you lunch, take you to coffee, and just ask you more about your background and what got you to that level and what can I learn from it. Since then, we've had really interesting cross mentorship experiences where she's reached out to me for things, I've reached out to her, and we've had a very blossomed engagement because of it. So there is no right or wrong, but I think sometimes you do have to look at it creatively and recognize that every single person that you meet does have something to teach you. You just have to figure out if that's something that you can learn from in a capacity that's going to help drive that, whatever it is that your pathway is that you're trying to better identify.
I love these examples, by the way. They're really good.
Seriously. And even the definition, I think that definition that you just gave of coach versus mentor is so clear. And I think that's going to help a lot of folks like distinguish, okay, well, what is it that I actually need? If you're at the stage where you're like, I don't even know what I want, a coach probably isn't going to help you hit some arbitrary thing that you have no idea, versus somebody who has kind of been there, or you're like, I think I want what they have. But for, like you even mentioned, sometimes or often I would say you have to share, demonstrate a little bit of vulnerability to even get that person to have a reason to want to help you, especially for folks who are more senior in their career. They may not have a ton of folks that they can go to, their C-suite or their senior VP. And for them to go to somebody one, rung above them either isn't possible, or they feel like they may even be putting like it's a level of vulnerability that they don't think makes sense.
Mm.
What's your filtration system for knowing like, yeah, this is somebody that I should be vulnerable with versus like an oversharing moment?
Yeah. That is so tricky. And I'll also tell you, I'm not a believer, going back to the flattery versus, genuine, authentic compliments. I don't think that vulnerability should be weaponized either. If you're trying to exploit somebody's emotions by sharing something very personal, private, vulnerable, in an expectation of getting that person to recognize the emotion to get something you want, that to me is like yuckyville. And I get requests to mentor others in both a formal and informal capacity quite a bit. And that's something that I'm often looking for is this person trying to make a true connection with me, or is this a packaged expectation or manipulation that is putting me in a position that I'm not comfortable with?
Yeah.
So looking at that through the reverse lens of how you're approaching another, I do think that when you're considering, I know I used the analogy earlier, but it is very much like a dating type of engagement. You're looking at a sea of individuals who have potential, and you're trying to discern and dilute, the ones that are going to have the most impact for you personally. But every one of those relationships has to have an expectation of give take. As somebody, I'm flipping the page again for a second, as somebody that has mentored as much as I have, I'll say like the majority of the time, I'm not getting something out of it like they're paying for it or they're making introductions for me. What I'm getting out of it is feeling recognized and valued. And sometimes like just a little bit of ego comes into play as the giver, that this person appreciates me enough as a person to invest their time thinking that I have something to offer, that that they're going to gain something from what I have to share, or, our conversation relationship. So sometimes that's what's in it for the mentor, is they want to have that give back. They want to have that moment of, man, I'm so glad I was able to help that person. That makes me feel great. That's why we do charity work. That's why we donate to, our favorite nonprofit. We want to have the feel good moment. But we can't have that if we feel like we're being taken advantage of. So in approaching the other side, I think there has to be the genuine nature along with a clear ask. So if you get to a point where it's like, you know what, I have narrowed it down, I've reached out, we've got a conversation going, I'm ready to make the ask. You have to make the ask, and it has to be specific and deliberate. I want to help people all the time, but if they just ask me, hey, can you help me? I'm not sure what I need to do. I know that what I said earlier is it's a little bit vague on purpose, but when you ask me for mentorship, if you reach out to me and say, would you be willing to be my mentor? Would you spend a couple of hours with me? I want to say yes. But I'm not going to say yes if I don't know rules of engagement, because if it's vague and I don't know where I can help, then I'm going to walk away from it feeling the opposite of ego. I'm going to feel like that was a waste of my time. I don't even know if I helped that person. I could have been doing something else for that hour. So specificity, I think, is equally important as a next step once you get that relationship going and make the ask.
So first, it seems like if we were to kind of summarize this, it's like, one, understand what is my deficit, right? What is the thing what area am I trying to grow in, right? And then identifying who in my near or accessible, environment do I admire because they do that thing really well, the thing I am deficit in. And then when I make the reach out very authentic, not flatter them, but compliment them authentically on what they do that you very much admire, and then make the ask.
Yes.
Is that right? Or did I miss a step, or am I?
No, I think that's great. This is somewhat of a framework, but I also feel like there has to be flexibility.
There it is, yes.
Yeah, because the other place that I've had great mentors that I didn't mention is introductions. So talking to other people and saying, this is my problem, this is my struggle. Do you know anybody that I could talk to? And getting those warm intros kind of takes the place of, develop like the the initial part of building the relationship, is when you have the introduction, somebody else has already put their own reputation on the line to get you connected to this other person that they know. And usually that's enough to just go into the ask and like move forward with how you want to proceed.
It's so crazy how like all of this actually, everything you just described can help you leapfrog in your career if you really did it right.
Yeah.
This is a question more for, I guess, both of you, because I can't answer this. We even have, like, one of the things we teach our clients, when especially our clients who are going for these very senior level roles, we tell them it is going to be very rare that you apply your way into one of these. So instead, start finding the right people to connect with, and then reach out to them. And that first reach out is where they get so held up, and you're like, you just have to make the ask. What do you say, maybe for both of you here, when someone is so, I guess, in their own, they're in their own way because they're in their own head saying, well, what if this person doesn't reach back out? This whole like fear of rejection thing. I have a very blunt answer, but I don't think people really respect that answer. So what do you guys say to that person?
Yeah, let's start with your answer, and then I want to hear what Katie has to say.
My answer is, who gives it bleep, right? Because if you message somebody and they don't message you back, you're no worse off. You're in the same exact situation that you're in today. But if you message someone the right way, saying the right things, and authentic, and there's good intention, and they connect back with you, man, that could potentially change the entire trajectory of your life or your career. One introduction, one opportunity, whatever. But my thing is, if you can't make the ask, then I don't know what to say to you.
That's not as brutal as I thought it was going to be.
Oh, okay.
I was like, well, I mean, that's great advice.
I don't know, but what do you say? What's the Elisa version or the Katie?
Well, I want Katie's perspective first.
My perspective on this, as somebody who is not like you, and I was terrified, absolutely terrified of messaging somebody. Like, I was like, let me take a template and spend an hour just making sure every period is in the right place, because I don't want to look like an idiot before I send this out. Cried when I saw that I had a typo that got sent out to 3 people. I was like, my life's over. Like, I was so far on the opposite extreme of you that I have a lot of empathy for those folks who get in their own way. And to be frank, it was something that I heard a Steve Jobs quote where he's like, it's very rare that I've asked somebody for help, like genuinely asked somebody for help, and they weren't willing to give it to me. Mm-hmm. And he's like, that was the luckiest thing that could have happened to me, because I found that out when I was 12 years old. And so I just kept assuming that people would want to help me. And I heard that when I was 22, and it was paired, like within 24 hours, I had a mentor who said something almost identical to it, probably plagiarized him, who knows. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to send out 12 messages. I'm going to send out 12 messages. To be frank, I didn't even hit my goal. I got scared and I sent 8 out. And I sent them to C-suite executives of Fortune 500 companies. And I said, you are exactly where I want to be 30 years from now. Is there anything you wish you knew 30 years ago? And almost every single one of them responded to me. And even after that, I still feel weird and still feel uncomfortable sometimes, like sending a message to folks. And I think my message is just like, it doesn't matter how you feel. Like, it is so irrelevant how you feel about doing the thing. Just ask yourself, is this helpful or is this unhelpful? Like, there's no such thing as good or bad most of the time. It's just, is this helpful or is this not helpful to help me become the best possible version of myself? And if the answer is yes, it's helpful for you to be the best version of yourself, it's irrelevant how you feel. Just do the dang thing.
Yep. Katie, I will also say I was that person pretty much until my late 20s, until I worked in sales for the first time. So I'm with you. I have that same empathy for, like, especially I think culturally in pockets of the US specifically, I feel like we have predominant cultures where we do not want to be a burden on anyone else. We don't want to risk offending them. We don't want to hear the proverbial exacerbated sigh on the other side of the ask of like, I can't believe this person is reaching out to me. Don't they know who I am? We kind of get in our own heads of expecting how someone else is going to respond. And one thing that helped me, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago when I was having a moment of this was just going through an exercise in my head of what if this was reversed? What if I was about to hear from somebody that I didn't know? And how, first of all, what would I say to them? How would I approach them? But how would I respond to this message? At the time, I wasn't probably getting as many asks as I do in my career today. And I started thinking through like, well, first of all, I would be flattered to hear from, I guess, what you would consider a fan, right? Like this person thinks that I have enough value to offer that they're willing to reach out and ask me a question thinking that I can help them. That's wonderful. But second, like if I don't have time to respond, I'm just not going to respond. It's not even a rejection, but it's not going to be because I think the other person isn't worth my time or that, you know, I'm mad at them for reaching out. It's part of why I do try. I mean, I'm not great at it. I maybe hit 8 out of 10, but messages I do receive, even if they're sales pitches, I genuinely try to respond to all of those because there's effort and work on the other side. And acknowledging that and treating the other person with enough respect to just say, hey, timing's not good right now. Or maybe I can make an introduction to somebody else that is better equipped or has more time or might be interested. I am constantly trying to do that because what I'm doing is I want to maintain and nurture that relationship for potential growth, even though the timing is not right now. You never know who you're going to come back to in the relationships of work, personal, and I very much believe in keeping my bridges in great working order and cobble them when needed and sometimes grow plants on them just for aesthetics. So yeah, I think it's important to realize, like going back to what I said at the very beginning, you need to have enough self-worth and value to recognize that asking another human being for something is not, yes, the fear of rejection exists, but to your point, if they say no, they say no and you move on. It's like, it's a sales funnel, right? It takes 100 asks to get to 10 maybes to get to 1 yes. Once you wrap your head around that, like it just becomes about hitting the numbers.
Yeah. I love that. It's giving yourself an at bat, right? That's all it is. How many at bats can I give myself? So if I'm going to send, like Katie said, 12 messages, but I get 8, I gave myself 8 at bats to either get on base or even potentially hit a home run. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I know I had a couple of folks DM me even just while we were talking. One of them is a question that I love. I understand why they didn't want to comment it publicly, but Gaurav, did you have any more questions before we dove into a couple from other folks?
I feel like, Elisa, you may have answered this, but we like asking this you're our second guest, but I'd love to know, what advice would you give to your 13-year-old self? Knowing what you know now, everything you've experienced in your career, all the wins, all the hardships, what advice would you give to your 13-year-old self?
This is a funny question because totally unrelated. I'm not a big New Year's resolution person. I don't really like staying up till midnight. I think our tie to the calendar is weird in general. But this year, I had my 12-year-old son who wanted to stay up until midnight. And so I fought the good fight. But as part of our activity to get us to midnight, I had asked around for a week prior, friends, family, I put it on Facebook, and I was also collecting advice of what would you tell your 12-year-old self, knowing what you know now. So I made it 12 instead of 13, but it was fascinating to see the different perspectives of, again, family members, friends, various ages, backgrounds, cultural beliefs, to see what they were sharing as far as like wisdom that they would impart that I was able to share with my son, which was a really wonderful exercise. And the overbearing advice that pretty much everyone said was to just like, don't care so much about what other people think. And there was a variation of that in about 12 to 14 of the messages. And then a few others that were more specific. And when I think about how I would answer that question in a business or career capacity, I think it's a lens of that. I feel very strongly that the way that we show up in this very interconnected, very technology focused world, we are constantly trying to protect ourselves because we fear so much of the unknown, again, that rejection. And I feel like many of us feel invisible in the world that we live in today. And so we tailor the way that we act, our behaviors, the choices that we make, oftentimes around what we perceive others expect of us, or what we think society or culture really demands from us in order to just fit in. Interestingly enough, I think it's a Brene Brown, one of her many wonderful quotes is it like fitting in is the opposite of inclusion, because you're having to conform who you truly are, your authentic self, into an expectation of what everyone else seems to be, just in order to show up there. And that's like, it's one of the hardest things that I've had to do as an adult, is leaving the predominant faith that I was raised in. And leaving a religious culture is not just about, changing a belief system. You're leaving a community. You are facing a huge uphill battle in terms of identifying personal values, going through a big questioning process of who I really am versus what I think I was wired to be. But through that, that's where I feel like I gained a lot of that very valuable insight and, frankly, confidence in where I am today. Going back to my 13-year-old self, this life is not so much about living it for another person or another group of people, or what you believe to be the desired outcome of your time here. It is about you, not to make it a selfish, you shouldn't be self-centric and damn everyone else to your wants and desires, but making decisions for yourself is a big part of, I think, the confidence you gain in career progression, and one that I don't think most 18, 20, 30, 40-year-olds figure out until, they're already so knee deep into their careers, and then they feel stuck because they feel like they had to make these decisions for whatever reasons. So anyway, long answer, but I definitely feel like just knowing your own value and living your life and making your choices for who you want to be and the legacy that you want to leave is what I would say.
That was really good. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Katie, now we could jump into questions.
Right. Now we'll jump in. This one, I'm very curious to hear how you respond to this. You started off by saying it's very important. A big part of getting a mentor is you being likable. They said, how do you become more likable?
Well, this is hard, because I think the self-awareness piece is important. You might think you're likable, and you might not be very likable.
Damn, you know how many times I've heard that from my wife, that exact sentence? But go on.
Yeah, I was gonna say your friends are more in it for her than
yeah. 100%.
Likability is not the depth of like true connection. Likability mostly means, is there a comfort level, right? And so I think being likable oftentimes is, it can get a little yucky because of things like bias and looking for commonalities that make it the other person feel like safe in a way. So likability can be a little bit icky in a way. But I do think there's general things that you can do to, one of my favorite phrases that I curated many years ago, again, sorry for the crass, but I've always coached people that you can be assertive without being an asshole. The two are not the same thing. And this goes back to the idea of radical candor. Obviously, you have to have a high level of respect for the other side and the individual, as well as when stakes are high and conversations need to be had. Likability, a lot of times, is rooted in elements of emotional intelligence. So, expressing interest in the other person, questioning or finding ways that you can offer those genuine compliments, letting the other person or party know that they're valued. I think this is a silly thing, but it's worth noting. Sometimes just being aware of your physical presence. You've probably heard of the term RBF, which is I hate it, but I get it. Sometimes people just have facial expressions that they truly do not control. It's just their face. And sometimes it can be very off-putting and looking like that person seems annoyed. They seem like they're bothered by something. I don't I don't really want to engage in an argument, so I'm just going to stand over here. Sometimes just being aware of what your face looks like is important. But along that, where you can take more, like you can make changes, your body language, like it or not, is sending a message to people. How you stand, the way that you sit, what you do with your hands, what your eyes are doing, your face is a big indicator. These are all things that like are translating to another person of how approachable are you, how comfortable are you. Sometimes even regulating moods can be expressed through our physical behaviors. So looking for ways that you can have an openness is a lot of times like related to likability, or at the very least approachability. And the other thing I'll say as far as your behaviors, so words that you select to use, your vocabulary, the way that you talk and engage with other people, think about tone, pitch, inflection, the way that you use language in conversations with people. Some people are not aware of vocal patterns that they may have that could sound very, or maybe not very, but subtly
off-putting.
Yeah, like if you're talking to somebody about a problem, for example, this is something that's going on. And I don't want to gender stereotype, but typically women do this more than men. When women tend to talk about a problem, we are very emotionally invested in the explanation of this problem. So as we're describing the details and we're introducing the characters of the story and plot points, we're telling a story and we're giving it life by, our voice and the way that we're expressing it. And sometimes this can be perceived by the other person as this person is like really negative, or they complain a lot, or they seem to be super focused on the gossip and problem and drama of this without really being interested in solving it. That can be very off-putting to the other side when it's not even an intention from the person that's sharing. They're seeking connection, but the other person might put up a guard and feel like, I don't want to talk about this. I'm going to avoid you now because I don't enjoy our conversations. Final thought there, be aware of, have you ever had that coworker that like just loves to stop by your desk and instead of just chatting for 3 minutes, they're there for like 45, and they just like don't pick up on social cues, and like you're like, yeah, okay, well, great, okay, well, have a good weekend, and then they keep talking. Like, that does not make people likable. This is usually what they'll say. That person is really nice. Like I want the absolute best for them, but I hate it when they come to my desk.
Oh my gosh.
So it's not even that they're not likable. It's like, I just don't want to spend time with them because I know what it takes to,
Yep.
Man, I actually asked that question so that me and Gaurav could become more likable. So that was helpful.
That's true. I was the one that asked that question and texted it to Katie. You know what's so funny is after this, we're going to send this to the editor and he's going to create some shorts. We could have some fun with this because there could be a clip that says, why aren't you getting a mentor? And then your response will be, sometimes it's just your face. That was the best line of this entire episode.
Your face. Yeah.
I love that.
Oh man.
I want to be mindful of time, Elisa. So, how can people find out about you, follow you, see what you're up to?
Oh, I mean, LinkedIn is my love language, so absolutely connect with me on there if you'd like. I'm pretty easy to find. As of right now, I am the only Elisa Garn in the world, so I feel like that's pretty cool. But also, I mean, we didn't really talk a ton about it. You'd mentioned my involvement with SHRM. The role that I play right now with them is really interesting. I actually work more so as a workplace architect to help teams, organizations that are looking for particularly like leadership transformations or upskilling. We do a lot of digital transformations, and the products and knowledge resources that we have within our organization at SHRM to help them meet those business objectives. So my role is, I'm not a salesperson at all, but if you're interested in those type of things, it's obviously a passion of mine. Human experience and doing work through the human lens is something that matters greatly to me, rather than just checking the box of profitability. Mm-hmm. So I would say, if anybody is interested in that, certainly can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well.
That's awesome.
That's
Yeah, we'll
awesome.
put your link here too, and when we actually get this out, we'll make sure we include that as well.
Lovely.
Elisa, thank you so much
Thank you for having
joining
me.
us.
Yeah,
was
I hope
great.
that I wasn't that colleague that stopped by your desk for 45 minutes today.
No, I am that colleague to Katie, except I can't go to her desk. I just give her a call and she's like, "Okay, I gotta run." Well, gotcha, got it. But I really appreciate you. Guys, if you're watching this live, give Elisa some love, give her some likes. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll that's it for this podcast.
All right. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Bye.